The theme is, should schools implement stricter safety regulations? Again, should schools implement stricter safety regulations? So now we'll have our first speaker from Harrison Memorial High proposing the theme. Put your hands together for her.
Panel of adjudicators, worthy opponents, esteemed teachers, and my dear audience, a good morning to you all. Today we stand here to argue, should schools implement stricter safety regulations? The primary responsibility of any school is to provide a safe environment where students can focus on learning and growing without fear. Stricter safety regulations are essential to ensure this environment, protecting not only the students, but also the teachers and staff. When schools have a clear, defined, and well-enforced safety policy, it prevents harmful incidents, minimizes risks, and allows for swift responses if issues arise. Consider the risk that children face today: bullying, harassment, accidents, and unfortunately, even rare cases, but severe incidents like violence or fires. Implementing stricter safety regulations ensure that schools are prepared for these situations and can protect students effectively. Reducing physical accidents. First, stricter safety regulations help prevent accidents in and around school premises. For example, mandatory regular maintenance, checks on playground equipment, sports gear, and facilities prevent unnecessary injury. Enforcing rules of lab practices in science classes or safety protocols in gym classes ensure that students aren't exposed to avoidable dangers. Jamaica has many issues in equipment-based problems. We see these issues like at the Cartridge College in Manchester, where a railing incident happened in October 2022. This happened with a young lady who fell from a railing, a board railing that was placed at their school. Then she was hospitalized. Addressing bullying and harassment. Stricter rules around behavior like anti-bullying regulations and clear consequences create a supportive environment where students feel safe. Schools that implement a zero-tolerance policy on bullying and harassment see a drop in incidents, fostering a more positive atmosphere where students feel free from fear of abuse from their peers. Between January 2022 and January 2023, 55 critical incidents related to violence were reported, affecting both primary and secondary schools. 55 incidents. This is only counting all the reported ones. Imagine the unreported. Preparedness for emergencies. Finally, stricter regulations include regular drills, readiness for emergencies, be it fires, natural disasters, or even security threats. These preparedness can save lives. When students and staff are trained to know exactly what to do, panic is reduced, and responses are quicker and more effective.
You know
Take it.
You mentioned stricter, but I'm not seeing where these regulations that you're proposing to implement are essentially stricter than what we have already in our status quo. I'm not seeing where.
We're seeing various issues that are happening within Jamaica. We have different issues that are arising. Like I said before, at the Cartridge College, these are issues that are happening where students are not safe within their environment that they are put in. We have to make a change within these environments that will secure our students and allow them to feel safe. When staff and students are trained, they know exactly what to do, panic is reduced, and responses are quicker and more effective. When we have our students within these environments, and when they leave us, they will have information that will help them after this. They will have the knowledge to know what to do in certain situations, whether it be natural disasters or even security issues. Safety regulations are not just about over-restricting students, they are about creating a secure, healthy, and conducive learning environment. We will take stock of where we stand in this debate. It is better to be proactive than reactive. As the saying says, it is better to be safe than sorry. I thank you.
Esteemed adjudicators, my worthy but misguided opponents, my fellow team members and members of the audience, a pleasant day to you all. Before I begin my speech, I would like to define some key terms of this motion. In this debate, implementation refers to the practical application and enforcement of existing regulations, while regulations are the establishment of rules or directives designed to ensure safety and order within schools. For this debate, safety is such a broad scope. For the purpose of this debate, we'll be focusing on immediate aspects of safety, which include physical security, violence and weapon prevention, emergency preparedness, and brush on additional aspects due to topical issues such as the upsurge of violence in schools and natural and man-made hazards. Our ideal safe school environment is one where students and staff feel secure, respected, and supported. It includes clear emergency procedures, accessible mental health resources, well-maintained facilities, and proactive staff who foster a culture of mutual respect and open communication. This environment prioritizes both physical safety and emotional well-being, encouraging students to focus on learning without fear or anxiety. We believe that the current standard of school safety regulations is substantial, that being the Ministry of Education Security and Safety Policy Guidelines updated in 2015, a comprehensive guide that covers essential aspects of school safety in Jamaica at all levels. If the current structure is sound, the focus should be on reinforcing rather than expanding regulations. For example, the recent incident at Holland High where 2 students were attacked by a vendor highlights issues in visitor screening and securing perimeters, which are all outlined in current regulations. The major problem we face are not the rules, Mr. Speaker, but the implementation. This implementation focuses less on rigorous enforcement and more on practicality. Additionally, the threats we face in school safety come from external problems within society that cannot possibly be solved through stricter school safety regulations. As the first speaker, I will justify why the current safety standard is sufficient. The current regulations set by the Ministry of Education are extensive and cover all primary areas of school safety necessary to create a secure environment. Let's look at these standards in depth. The zero-tolerance policy, according to the Ministry of Education, is, and I quote, refers to the mandatory sanctions for an infraction of a specific nature, regardless of extenuating circumstances such as mistakes or ignorance. This ensures that all misdemeanors are given the necessary sanctions, the sanctions being mandatory with limited discretion, predetermined and consistent, and significant and inflexible. This ensures that school regulations are just, precise, and without manipulation. Hypothetically, if this policy was properly implemented and abided by all schools, it would lead to environments with clear practical rules, creating a free, organized, and just environment. For example, in a BICE regulation system, let's say you and your friend Johnny got in trouble for bringing marijuana on school compounds, and the punishment is a month-long suspension. You get punished for a month, but Johnny only gets suspended for a week because he's the school's star athlete. Under the zero-tolerance policy, if implemented correctly, both you and Johnny would be given the same punishment. Furthermore, when it comes to violence and weapon prevention, there's a plethora of rules, laws, and guidelines used to handle the matter. For instance, contraband includes offensive weapons such as firearms, knives, illicit substances, drugs, etc., which are prohibited. Under the Offensive Weapons Prohibition Act, it prohibits a person from knowingly having with him an offensive weapon in any public space in which school constitutes as a public space. Under the Education Regulation Act, all schools are mandated to record any incident happening at the school, from fights to misbehaving in class, in addition to having a security guard on campus during school hours registered with the Private Security Regulation Authority. Mr. Speaker, we are aware of the upsurge of violence in schools since the onset of face-to-face classes, whether gang-related or from sudden physical altercations. But there are rules already governing cases like these. Consider the case of the Irwin student who is now deceased after being stabbed to death by a fellow student. His mother claims that at lunch he was draped up by the student beforehand, reported the case, and no action was taken. Under the zero-tolerance policy, if enforced correctly, the report would have been taken seriously and the situation would have been handled, possibly saving a life. Lastly, the school guidelines are sufficient on the topic of emergency preparedness. This involves creating, practicing, and communicating clear procedures for responding to hazards, including evacuation routes, lockdowns, and maintaining effective communication with staff, parents, and emergency responders to ensure student and staff safety. All schools are required under the guidelines to plan and execute 3 emergency drills in the year covering fire, earthquake, and school prevention. Principals are advised as well under the Critical Incident Management Manual prepared by ODPEM, as well as having the necessary authorities on hand of a crisis. So what does this mean? Most natural hazards are out of our control, and even fire to a lesser extent. But having the necessary plans and precautions, we can mitigate the damage inflicted. When was the last time your school or workplace had an emergency drill? I personally cannot remember. When was the last time we had an earthquake? If schools really started implementing the already existing guidelines in place, such as ensuring buildings are up to building code standards or the necessary exits are labeled, as a student, if there are fire breaks out, you would know where the nearest and safest exit is. These rules all exist, Mr. Speaker, whether it be under the MOE regulations, health and wellness standards, or the country's legislations. The problem is not making them stricter or additional regulation. The problem is the implementation. As the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Our regulations ain't broke and they don't need fixing. And yes, we acknowledge that no rule is perfect enough to solve safety issues or completely prevent them. There are other factors such as societal issues that no amount of school rules could solve. The opposition temporarily rests.
Good morning, honorable judges, teachers, and fellow debaters, audience members. Welcome. Nice to have you today. As a second speaker, I will build on the point made by my teammate and provide further evidence on why stricter safety regulations in school are essential. Firstly, stricter safety regulations help preventing avoidable accidents. Many accidents in school are the result of outdated equipment, poorly maintained facilities, or a lack of safety procedures. For instance, science labs, sports facilities are common places for accidents. Stricter safety protocols like routine inspection and safety certifications make it less likely for students to expose to necessary risks. One example of this slackness. In October 2022, a sixth former student of the Carteret in Manchester was leaning on a wooden railing which collapsed, and she was later hospitalized. This happened in her own environment, in her own compound, a place where she spent most of her time. Also, not only her, but majority of her teammates. Secondly, mental health is a crucial part of student safety. Stricter anti-bullying policies are necessary for maintaining a supportive environment where students feel emotionally safe. Research shows that schools with strong anti-bullying regulations report lower incidents of bullying and harassment, resulting in fewer mental health issues among students. When policies with enforceable consequences are in place, students feel protected and respected, which is crucial for their overall well-being and academic success. Third and final, safety regulation increase preparedness of unexpected emergencies. Today's world requires students to be more prepared for a range of emergencies, from natural disasters to potential security threats. Stricter regulation ensure regular emergency drills and certain communication evacuation plans. When schools have practiced response to fires, lockdown, and other emergencies, students and staff can act quickly and safely without panic. This is the level of preparedness could save lives in a crisis. In conclusion, stricter safety regulation protects students physically, emotionally, and mentally, and they prepare schools to handle emergency efficiently. These benefits are invaluable, not just for individual students, but also for the entire school communities. This is why we strongly support implementing stricter safety regulations in school. Thank you.
Good morning. Before I get into my speech, I want to rebut a few arguments that I heard earlier. Now, what this proposition has failed to do was emphasize what these rules are and how to make them stricter. What we're seeing is a reiteration of these rules and not essentially them defining how they're making these rules, as the motion says, stricter. Now, our esteemed judges, members of the audience, and opponents, good morning. Side proposition seeks to misguide you in thinking that our standing rules and regulations that govern our Jamaican schools are ineffective in curbing safety threats. And because of this, we need to implement stricter safety regulations. But I push the argument that this is completely unnecessary and uncalled for. In the status quo, few schools exhibit major behavioral issues, and where these issues exist is not the fault of the rules, but instead how these rules are implemented and the external factors contributing to these issues. Now to date, Mr. Speaker, Jamaica has 995 primary level schools and 180 secondary schools. Over the past year, just 55 critical incidents occurred. Yes, this may be concerning, but on the macro scale, but zero in on the root causes, and you will see that we are dealing with an issue outside of the school, but also involves our communities and the livelihoods of our students. According to WCP.org, students are likely to express themselves through acts of violence, depending on their home and community environment, whether through lack of sleep, improper stress management, abuse, or having witnessed violence, among a myriad of other external factors, which have been proven to be likely triggers of many school-based violent acts. Now, Mr. Speaker, being privy to this information, it shows that we need a better alternative to the stricter rules that side proposition, would want to implement. Making schools into 8-hour prisons is not the way to go. Instead, we need our government to prioritize better investment in programs targeted towards mental health and well-being of our students. We need restorative justice, proper guidance and counseling programs, as well as mentorship programs within our schools and communities. We also need the assistance of government agencies to conduct regular checks on all schools across the island to ensure that existing safety rules and regulations, including fire safety and health safety, are being enforced responsibly and all necessary reports are being made to the necessary ministries. Now, Mr. Speaker, recent reports state that our government has targeted some 500 schools with roughly 12,500 participants, which include trained administrators, educators, students, parents, and guardians to implement the Restorative Peace Training program, among others. The implementation of these programs will pinpoint areas of weakness in our schools, identify children with behavioral issues, and address them with the help of existing trained experts, such as our guidance counselors and the deans of discipline. This, Mr. Speaker, is much better than the government investing copious amounts of funds on metal detectors and requiring schools to search students and their belongings. Now, if searching students' belongings isn't strict enough, then I suggest that proposition could mandate that all school bags be transparent to eliminate wasted time in searching over 1,000 bags daily, and in the process infringe on the rights of the students and promote a culture of mistrust within our schools. Just saying. Mr. Speaker, our government's safety regulations for our schools are sufficient. We are talking about already existing zero-tolerance policies on contraband and weapon use in schools. And if a child is found in contempt of these rules, they will face possible suspension or expulsion, or depending on the severity of the matter, must face the courts, as whatever is illegal in society is illegal in our schools also, and must be treated accordingly. Now, sides up proposition. What we gather from our arguments is that we need rules stricter than the law itself, or what we should gather rather. But I have some troubling news for you, because schools must and always conform to the law, not the other way around. Mr. Speaker, accepted?
You were saying that, my question is, what about the schools that are in high crime rate areas and the safety regulations that we already have in place are not enough to keep them safe?
Thank you so much for that. Because what I'm about to get into is basically focusing on the programs that are already there. But the issue that we're seeing, that I'm about to go into later on, is that implementation is a problem. Now, we need better implementation. So these rules are sufficient and they're great and they are working for the most part. It is schools now, with the help of different agencies, as I said earlier, to now help make these programs effective. Now, without a doubt, right, these draconian rules that will without a doubt make navigating school life more difficult and apply oppressive pressure on our students who are already working hard to conform to school rules in this challenging society. Why should we reinvent the wheel when these regulations have been working well for the past couple of decades? Our schools administrations already know their roles and responsibilities in maintaining an orderly school environment. It is up to them to use the regulations prescribed effectively and correctly to create their goal of a productive, progressive, and safe school environment. This side opposition rests momentarily.
Good afternoon, honorable judges, teachers, and fellow debaters, and the audience members. The opposing team had mentioned that this is diverting funds from things like the education of the students. But I would like to say that what is more important than the safety of the students, because numerous studies conducted by the National Center of Education of National Education Statistics have shown that schools with stricter security measures and like controlled access points and surveillance systems experience fewer incidents of violent crime. Prioritizing students' safety, schools create more conducive learning environment, reducing fear and anxiety among students and staff. Stricter regulations can act as a deterrent to individuals who may be considered harming others, thereby preventing tragedies before they occur. Research from the Department of Justice has indicated that visible security measures such as security cameras and metal detectors deter potential threats and reduce the likelihood of violent incidents, hereby creating a safer and more controlled and better school environment for students. By investing in stricter safety measures, schools can create a positive learning climate. You had said that it diverts funds from other things, but the prime responsibility of school is the education and also the safety of the students. So we are not, in terms, wasting. We are making it safer and better for all the students. It makes a positive learning climate where students feel safe and supported, leading to improved academic outcomes. It makes a supportive environment where students feel emotionally safe. Research shows that schools with strong anti-bullying regulations report lower incidents and harassment, resulting in fewer mental health. And the implementation is quite good because most schools, they do rallies, some agencies help, but it is not mostly the implementation, because even though there are various agencies that are helping our students and the schools to lower their problems and incidents, there are still a lot of incidents that require different rules and a stricter approach, because not everything is as black and white, because some incidents require a touch of care, some instances require stronger and stricter rules. Therefore, what I am saying is that the implementation of stricter rules would improve the experience that children have at school, because they feel safer, more secure, and they're able to learn better, knowing that they are safe and they are safe in their compound and no one is out. That's it.
Esteemed judges, fellow debaters, and distinguished guests, good afternoon. As the final speaker for the opposition, I will demonstrate conclusively why the proposition's call for stricter school regulations is not only unnecessary, but potentially harmful to our educational environment. Existing framework, the adequacy of the existing framework, given the 2015 Security and Safety Policy Guidelines, which provide comprehensive foundation covering violence prevention, details emergency protocols, and establishes visitor screening procedures. The Holland High incident exemplifies not regulatory gaps, not failures of the existing rules, but failures in the enforcement of those rules. The security personnel failed to follow the existing rules, the existing protocols, and proper implementation of the given rules would have prevented the incident. Adding rules does not fix execution problems within those rules. Our research into school safety incidents reveals a complex web of external factors that regulations alone cannot address, such as family dynamics, home environment changes, and community violence that spills into schools, along with socioeconomic pressures affecting student behaviors and peer pressures from outside of school boundaries. The proposition's failure to define their stricter rules or to explain how their proposals differ from the already existing rules not only shows a failure in showing their difference from the existing rules. Let me just move on. Family dynamics. These external factors, as documented in the Ministry of Education's own internal reports, demonstrates why internal regulations alone cannot solve our school safety challenges. The opposition argues that stricter rules ensure safety, but fail to demonstrate the causation between rules and safety. They ignored the successful schools with moderate policies and are proposing an over-regulation of rules, and have overlooked the negative psychological impacts that their proposals would bring. Their proposed measures would create a prison-like environment, erode student-teacher trust, and divert resources from effective solutions. We propose a three-pronged approach tackling community integration, mentorship programs, family counseling services, community policing partnerships, and regular audits, staff training programs, and clearer accountability measures in schools. Denied. Preventative support systems, such as mental health resources, conflict resolution training in schools, and positive behavior reinforcement. Their approach creates fear. Our approach builds trust. Their approach treats the symptoms, but our approach addresses the causes. Denied. Their approach is reactive, and our approach is proactive. Their approach alienates students, and our approach empowers students. The opposition rests its case.
The final decision for our judges, right? Anticipating a good result, right? Wonderful. So before I go ahead and announce the winner for today's competition, I'm going to give the judges' remarks. All right? So for our proposing team, which is Harrison Memorial High, you presented general arguments, but the judges would have wanted you to expound more about the fire safety aspect of it. All right? The points for this first speaker about the staff and the students and the comparison you made with the man-made and the natural, that was very lovely arguments that you proposed, and you were clear, right? The judges also love the fact that this first speaker took questions from our opposing teams, right? So you allowed room for that aspect of it. For the opposing team, which is the Herbert Morrissey Technical Eye, the judges like the fact also that you made mention about the man-made and the natural disasters, and you made some solid points, and they really flowed, especially for our first speaker. You provided very solid arguments, but we wanted you to slow down a bit because the judges had a very hard time trying to process all that you were saying. So you had some really good points. They flowed very well, but we wanted for the ear to, for it to pass and flow wonderful. But you had some wonderful points for the first speaker. We also love the fact that you mentioned the whole ODPEM regulations, and you provided evidence support, the points that were listed. You listed practically all the safety measures that they have in place. So the measures are there, it's just for proper implementation and so forth. So we love the fact that you also brought about that. For the third speaker, we wish you had taken some questions from the rebutting side for the, team spirit. We like that aspect of it. So the judges would have loved for you to at least take a question from the rebuttal speaker. All right? So all in all, these were the judges' comments. now for our winner. And remember, we don't have a loser, because whatever the decision the judges make today, it could be the reality for tomorrow. All right? So, for point standing for Harrison Memorial High, we have a total of 27.5. Put your hands together for them. And for Herbert Morrison Technical High, we have 34.5. Clap yourselves. All right, so this means that Herbert Morrison Technical High will advance to the finals. Wonderful. All right, and Harrison, you still have a chance. All right, because we have the third place position, so you still have a chance. So I want everyone to put your hands together again for our team members. They did very well. Wonderful.